Okaeri, welcome back to my channel, Made in Transit. My name is Taylor, and today we're going to be talking about the differences between anime and real life in Japan. Now you may be wondering what makes me qualified to make this video. As someone whose love of manga and anime began in late elementary school, junior high school kind of time in my life, I can definitely understand why some people think that Japan is the way that it's projected in those types of media. And I actually did get a request from a viewer to make this video, to talk about the things that are different, because this is not to shit on anyone who who really likes manga and anime. I went through a huge phase of that in my life, and I still enjoy it to this day. But not everyone gets a chance to come over here, and I thought that was a really good request for a video, because how else are you gonna learn if you can't come over here right now? So I want to get that out of the way first, that this is not to shit on people who enjoy those types of media. This is just genuinely talking about the differences between the two. So without further ado, let's go over 10 things that are different between anime and real life in Japan. Now the first one, at risk of being a little bit too obvious, is that all of those crazy hair colors that you see for the main characters in anime and manga, it's not a thing here. Of course, there's the matter of personal taste, and there are some people who dye their hair, but there's a huge cultural reason for why most people don't, and that's because lots of different workspaces and schools have rules that you cannot change your hair color. You have to keep it your natural hair color, which for almost every Japanese person is either very dark brown or black. A lot of the people who end up changing their hair color and playing with it are those who are in the beauty world in Japan, or university students who finally are free from their high school's rules and can finally play with their appearance in a way that they would like. There's also really strict rules against piercings, types of jewelry, things like that. So you'll see a lot of university students really experimenting with different types of looks. But outside of those specific kind of areas of society, you really won't see a lot of dyed hair or crazy colors. The second point that I want to make is that in anime or manga, there's a lot of yelling, whether it's in a fight, whether you're getting ready to level up, whether it's just talking to each other. You might have that one archetype character that's really loud and likes to yell. And of course, while those people do exist, overall, a lot of Japanese people are extremely quiet. If you're in a public space, you really won't hear a lot of yelling. Even at sports events, everything is very organized in its noise, if that makes sense. Like, there are cheering sections, and those are the sections that do the chants, and sometimes the audience will join in, but again, it's very organized in how you make noise and when you make noise. You will also find that with public transportation, even if it is packed to the brim with people, you can usually hear a pen drop. Same thing with movie theaters. I recently went to go see the newest Ghibli movie, Kimitachi wa Doikiru ka, and every seat was full, but you would not have been able to tell from the lack of just human noise that existed in that room. Kind of connected to that is my third point, which is the words that people use when they talk. In both anime and manga, you'll hear a lot of aggressive language, like kusoyaro toka, fuzakenna toka. There's also that sound that I cannot make for the life of me when someone's getting ready to attack or approach someone in an anime or manga. Let me see if I can get my husband to come make that noise, because for the life of me, I cannot do it. Hayato, I need your voice.
What?
I can't make the hora noise.
こらーって。
So, one more time.
こらー。
Thank you.
ふざけんなよこの野郎。
So,
なめん
exactly.
なよ。
People don't talk like that.
おととい来やがれ。
Perfect.
シャラクセ。
シャラクセ犬やしゃ。
犬やしだけ。
だけやね。ありがとう。助かった。So basically everything that you just heard Hayato say, people don't say those things in everyday life. If you do hear that kind of language, it might be kids, playing with each other at the park or something like that. Maybe even imitating manga or anime or a show that they like. But you're much more likely to hear an adult curse under their breath or say, akuso, like under their breath, instead of actually say it to someone like that. You're also much more likely to hear a lot of polite language, such as sumimasen, onegai shimasu, things like that. My next point is a little more nebulous, but I'm going to see if I can explain this in a concise way. And that is the Japan aesthetic that you see in anime or manga. So this might be shrines, bright neon signs, lots of small shops, things like that, like the typical view that you might have of a Tokyo side street. And while those areas of Japan do exist, and those aspects of anime and manga are based on real places a lot of the time, those are usually very specific areas of the city, while other areas may look indistinguishable from other big cities. Two examples that kind of show this dichotomy that pop into my mind are the Golden Gai district in Shinjuku in Tokyo. That is very small bars, small shops, like little signs. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. That kind of environment definitely exists in like the Golden Gai kind of area. But if you go to, for example, Nagoya, I went to the city center of Nagoya a couple of years ago, and it just had large department store buildings. There was nothing that gave it that kind of anime or Japan aesthetic. Number 5 is one that I might make an entire video on because I find the culture and the nuance around this word to be fascinating, and that is otaku. The view kind of, at least from the States, from people that I know who are into anime and manga, is that being an otaku in Japan is normal, it's mainstream, it's kind of considered the norm. Along with that, in the States, otaku is usually synonymous with someone who likes anime and manga, or at least it was when I was growing up. Anyone who liked that form of media was kind of lumped into the otaku space. Though with the increase in popularity in those types of media, I think that might be changing, but based on the way it was when I grew up, that's kind of what the word encompassed. But in Japan, liking anime and manga and the concept of otaku are not necessarily inextricably linked. A good example is that my husband consumes a lot of both of these mediums, but no one here would call him or consider him an otaku. And that's because otaku means to become obsessed with something, to have something be your main focus, and to dive completely into that. Because of this, you can be a book otaku or a sports otaku. It can be combined with other words to show that you are just completely obsessed with this thing. But if you don't add a qualifier to it, just using the word otaku, that is usually connected to someone who loves anime and manga. And that is still a very small subsection of the Japanese population. So you're not necessarily going to walk around the streets and see people from that subculture, walking around everywhere. The reason I say I want to make a whole video on it is I want to get different people's perspectives on what that word means and whether it has a positive or negative connotation or somewhere in the middle, because I do think that there's a lot of nuance to it and it's changing constantly, but there is a bit of a negative stigma, I believe, connected to that word still in Japan to this day, in the same way that it might be in the West. If you've heard otherwise or know otherwise, please let me know in the comments down below. Number 6 is that most characters in anime and manga are depicted to live in a larger apartment or a house, and this really isn't the case in reality. Of course, like all of these, some people live in large apartments and in houses, especially if you have a family, just like in the West, people will make that move when they need more space. But a lot of people in this country live in small apartments by themselves or as a couple. I know quite a few families that still live that apartment life, and having like a yard and areas to do barbecues and things like that is seen very much like a luxury lifestyle. These next 4, I'm going to talk more about tropes that you may see in different types of manga or anime, and a couple of these are for shoujo manga because that's what I grew up reading. Though this next point could be for all different genres, and that is people going to school by car. You'll see this in quite a lot of anime and manga, and that just does not happen. I asked my husband if he's ever witnessed this, and he said never in his life has he ever seen a Japanese student come to school by car. No matter how rich they are, no matter how elite they are, he's never witnessed it. This country also doesn't have school buses, so people come either by bicycle, train, bus, walking. Any of those modes of transportation are normal, but coming to school in a car, it's not a thing. Which is a shame, because I believe that it's kind of a rite of passage to drive to school with the shitty speakers in the back, blowing out whatever is left of those speakers with the bass, like 7 in the morning because you feel cool on your way to school as a senior. That's definitely a rite of passage for growing up, in my opinion. So that's kind of a shame that people here don't get to do that. The next one is definitely for my fellow shoujo girlies, and that is the quintessential scene where your protagonist will wake up late for school, run out of the house eating some kind of bread or toast or something of that nature. This does not happen because people in this country don't walk and eat. This is something that I didn't even notice when I first moved here because I was doing it and didn't think twice about it, but then I started to notice that I was the only one doing it. Even walking and drinking is something that a lot of people don't do. Even if you have a coffee or something, people will find a place to sit and then consume that thing that they just purchased. They don't usually have it while they're walking. It's one of those things that once I started noticing it, I couldn't unnotice it. And then I started feeling weird doing it. So I noticed that I no longer walk and eat either. I don't know why this is. There's a lot of like finger food and easy to eat on the go food in this country. So I'm not really sure why people don't do it, but it's not a thing. Now these last two, while maybe at the risk of sounding a little bit too obvious, I think I need to mention because of some stuff I've seen out in the world, out in the ether. It is so hot in here. I cannot with this hair right now. The first one here, I'm going to come again after my shoujo girlies, and that is that the way that Japanese men speak in that genre of anime or manga is not the way that they speak here. Not only the words that they use, which I mentioned earlier, but also just kind of the fetishized, kind of idealized way that these men are depicted in this genre is not reality. And again, like I said, at the risk of seeming like I don't need to say that, some of the stuff I've seen on the internet and the way that people talk about coming to this country to find a Japanese boyfriend, or I stumbled upon something I wish I didn't know existed, which is Japanese boyfriend ASMR. It's a very strange genre of content, but some of the comments under that made me feel like I really needed to include this here. It's okay to enjoy the archetype that is presented in a story or in a genre of media. All of us do this, all of us have the right to enjoy doing this. But the problem is when you take that idea and you transpose it onto reality and expect that from real humans. And I can say, as someone who has dated and is now married to a Japanese man, this is a very fetishized and very, what's the word I'm looking for? Imagined view of what real humans here are like. So just keep that in mind when you come over here. Enjoy the idealized version that we get to experience in the media. Have fun with it, but just don't transpose that onto reality. In the exact same way, I want to point out for my shonen readers and other male-focused genre readers that women here do not wear extremely short skirts and have their titties out all the time. It seems like it would be obvious, but again, I just have to say, from stuff that I've seen going down said rabbit hole I mentioned earlier, some people don't seem to get that that is not reality. And in reality, school uniforms are not an exception to the rigid set of rules that I mentioned earlier that are in schools here. So a lot of uniform skirts are required to be a lot longer than what you see. Now, some girls do roll them up, as part of fashion. When I was here in high school, I was guilty of that. But let me tell you, when those teachers come by, the school that I went to actually had nuns because it was a Christian school. That's a whole other story. But if they caught you, oh honey. So a lot of people find, or a lot of girls find, that it's really not worth it to roll it up at school, because then you just have to roll it down every time someone walks by that has authority. It's a thing. I know those last two seem a little outlandish, but I had to put them in here just in case someone really is expecting to see those things when they come over here. Japan is a country just like any other. It has extremely positive aspects to it and negative aspects. It's a gray world with a lot of different types of people living in it, just like every other place. But to finish this video out on a more positive feeling note, I wanted to name 5 things that are actually the same between anime and real life. For the first 2, we're going to stay with the school theme, and the first one is that often you'll see a bunkasai or culture festival depicted at schools in manga or anime, where they have a cafe that the students make or put on a play or something like that. That is real. I actually did that when I came here in high school. It's like an event at the school, and all of the different classes make some kind of attraction for people to come and check out on that day. The second one is that you will see a lot of students wear school uniforms all the time, not just at school. And that's because uniforms are seen as kind of a formal wear. They're acceptable pretty much everywhere. I believe you could probably even wear one to a funeral and no one would be upset. They might just assume that you came from some kind of school event before this. So it's like a safe thing to wear to pretty much anything. A lot of this is also that Japanese students are much more involved in their school than a lot of people tend to be in the West. I taught at an eikaiwa, which is like an after-school school, and a lot of my students would come to my lesson at like 8 p.m. after having already done like a school sports practice and maybe after-school study and juku, which is cram school, and then they come to my class, which is just insane. But they would still be wearing their school uniform because they hadn't returned home to change clothes, even at 8 o'clock at night. Number 3 is that summer festivals where people wear yukatas and there's fireworks are really a thing in this country. And they're just as fun as they're depicted in both the anime and the manga usually, except that you will sweat buckets. It is so hot during summer festivals. Though it is a lot of fun to do that goldfish catching game, I think a lot of families come home with unexpected pets after going to summer festivals. Number 4 is that a lot of the nature views that you'll see are quite accurate. Whether it be rice fields, mountains, areas around shrines, Ghibli movies, a lot of those depictions are based in reality, and you can probably find a location that matches something that you've seen in your favorite manga or anime. And finally, bowing is a real thing here. Now, on the daily, people don't go bowing all the way, from the waist, the 90-degree bow. That's not something that people do on the daily and usually. It's usually just a slight incline of the head or the upper part of the back. But it is used on the daily as a greeting or an acknowledgement of someone. That concludes my list of 10 things that are different and 5 things that are the same, but I would love to hear in the comments down below if you live in Japan. Maybe you disagree with me, maybe you agree with me, maybe you have your own things to add to these lists. I would love to hear what you have to say. Also, if you don't live in this country and you have other preconceptions or ideas that you want to ask about, go ahead and leave those in the comments down below and I'll be sure to get back to you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, click that notification bell, all that good stuff, because I've got some great content coming out for you guys soon. But for now, I'm gonna head out. Ja ne!